Hi. Yeah, Tony Pearson from the Royal New Zealand Navy. Close cousins to the Australians just spoken, West Island. Got North, South and West Island, the Australians. But we're just going through or beginning to do a project on replacing our current ribs. Now, we're very much into the multi-role tasking. It's a ship's rib, and it's going to be multi-role. We've got about 35 of them, and they're getting old. The tasking has changed, so they're not really doing what we want. So we're just looking at how or what we replace that. Going back to James's presentation, looking at what's wrong, we've done that. Looking at the policy, I think there's actually another stage in that. Because this is our one chance to provide a new rib, it's also our one chance to look at the policy. So we've actually got to look at the policy and see whether the policy is what we want. Up till now, the policy has been driven by the equipment, the wrong way round. So this is our one chance now to get equipment driven by policy. So there's that extra stage. New Zealand, stuck in the middle of nowhere. About 4.5 million people. You can read that. Yeah, going back to the Admiral's presentation, about 85% of exports go by sea. $4 billion of fisheries. So we're very, very much a maritime country. We actually have about the third, arguably, but about the third largest search and rescue zone in the world. So, and we go right from the Antarctic up to the equator. So our tasking is huge, and the variety of environments is massive. And putting that area onto Europe just gives you an idea of how big that is. An enormous area of responsibility. Also, looking at distances, our nearest petrol station's 2,000 k away in Sydney. So once we leave Auckland, we are standalone. We have a tanker. That's just been decommissioned, and we're just about to, or we're having a new tanker built. That tanker is ice capable because it's going to be going down and resupplying fuel into Antarctica. And the requirements for that are enormous. The ice loadings, the ice loadings, plus also the heating. Everything has to be heated to keep the ice down. So, yeah, right from the equator down to the Ross Sea. And to do it, that's what we've got. So we're only a small navy, a couple of frigates, a couple of offshore patrol vessels, and 4 inshore, and a tanker, and a multi-role vessel. And we're just in the process of purchasing a dive and survey vessel, which hopefully is in the process of being bought at the moment from Norway. The multi-role is probably the most important ship in the Navy. We're doing more and more joint ventures with Army, so our whole raison d'etre is based around working with the Army, doing a lot of disaster relief around the Pacific Islands. And so it's not an active multi-role vessel, but it's an amphibious support ship rather than the first line amphibious vessel. So those are the roles that we need our RIB to do. So again, multi-function, multitask, and it's a whole range of stuff. The key items that we're looking at is, and where our current RIB falls over, is on boarding parties. We cannot put a fully loaded boarding party onto our current RIB. It'll only take about 730 kg, and we reckon we need about 1,000 kg. So that's our main requirement that we've got to sort. As a Navy, we're responsible for going up to about a Tier 3 boarding, which is an obstructed boarding. As a Navy, we do not do opposed boardings. However, because we're doing a lot of joint ventures, our SAS is very keen to be able to use the ship's rib to do opposed boardings as and when necessary. So going back to the requirements, that may not be an essential requirement, but it's very much a really nice to have requirement. And yeah, the rest of it is just standard sort of seaboat support. What we have at the moment, we've got Zodiac Hurricane ribs, got 9 older ones, about 20 years old, that are stern leg, and about another 27, 28 jet-driven ribs. And as a slightly separate aside, we've got 4 9-meter ribs, which the SAS have just purchased. But they will only go onto the multi-role vessel, so we cannot operate those ribs from any of the other ships. They're just too big. What we have or what we need, we're restricted to about 7.3, possibly 7.5 meters, because that's the only space there is on the ships to put it in. And they do, yeah, maximum speed of about 40 knots, 25 knots loaded, and displacement of about 3.3 tons, which with the weight of the ship, that's not quite big enough. And again, Volvo Penta and Yanmar, depending on the type. So those are the requirements, if you like. So what we end up by doing, a lot of fishery protection, that's probably the main role. And that's fishery protection in the islands, very pleasant sort of day out in Fiji. That's not quite so pleasant day out up in the Ross Sea down in Antarctica, but doing the same role. So again, it's got to go from tropical to polar operations. Another area that we do is earthquake relief. So that is actually the recent earthquake in Kaikoura in New Zealand, which is, whoops, go back somewhere. That is the main road going from north to south, the equivalent of the M1 in UK. Autobahn over here, the whole of the hillside has just come down and covered it. And that's right the way along the road. That's taken about 18 months to clear, and it's still only sort of open as a 1-lane road. That's before the earthquake. That's after. The coast has risen by about 5 meters. The only way into Kaikoura, which is really very much a tourist town, was by boat. And luckily we were doing the 75th Navy anniversary, and we had a lot of foreign ships as well. So actually, along with the Canterbury and our frigates, we had various other foreign ships went down. The Australians, the Americans came down, and we were having to get people out by boat onto the ships. A lot of the tourists didn't want to go because all they were eating was crayfish, lobster that was in the freezers and defrosting. So they were having a whale of a time. A lot of them didn't want to disappear, but yeah, we got them all out. So again, that is the Kaikoura. So that's in the harbour, and the Canterbury here. So we were shipping everyone out to the ships as a escape mechanism. Another role, we do island resupply. This is Raoul Island, a volcano that's got lots of scientists on board. Again, so it comes down, the current ribs we've got a composite hold, not particularly good environment to take a composite boat into. They damage quite easily. And again, this is down in the sub-Antarctic, so we go from north of New Zealand down to the sub-Antarctic islands, Auckland Isle, again a scientific community that they're doing a resupply of. Another role we do is obstacle avoidance. So again, Canterbury going into a relief, hurricane relief operation. The sonar doesn't work because of cavitation around the bulb of the ship, so we've had to adapt a sonar, and the rib actually goes in ahead of the Canterbury to make sure there's no semi-submerged containers, so it's got free access into the harbour. And main thing, sightseeing. So they get used to go and do the nice jollies, sightseeing, shark protection for hands to bathe and everything else. So a key role of the New Zealand ribs. The Special Forces boat, they've got a 9-metre boat, a Canter Marine from Canada, with dual outboards on the back. But as I say, the Canterbury is the only ship in the New Zealand Navy that will actually be able to operate that boat. So, what do we want? And the question is, we don't actually know at the moment. But these are the sort of things that we're actually going to need. The critical requirements: hold a 6-man boarding team, weight of about 1,000 kg, 7.3 metre overall. We might squeeze that out by half a metre, but really we've not got room for more than another half metre on that. Range of about 100 nautical miles. Again, that's what we've got, and probably what we'll keep wanting. An endurance, fully loaded, 100 nautical miles at 12 knots, 8 hours. 25 knots as a laden speed, which is the important one. We don't need anything particularly quick. The ability to definitely undertake Tier 3 boardings, but preferably Tier 4 opposed. And a recent one that's only actually just come up, we don't do airdrops of these ribs, but we got stuck. We had a patrol boat out in Fiji, needed a new replacement rib. Got the rib to the Hercules, and it was 10 mil too high to actually fit in the back of the Hercules. So slightly embarrassing. 10 mil for the Americans is half an inch. But so yeah, that's something that we've never even thought about before. But it's just come up that we may need occasionally to air transport them. So those are the ultimate requirements that we would love to be able to achieve. The Canadians have actually got a boat that their tactical group are using, which is very interesting. It's a Canter Marine, and they actually, if they go and deploy with a frigate, they just transpose. They put their boat on, take the frigate boat off. So that's one of the options we've got, but there are plenty others, and I believe the Zodiac told me that the Germans are looking at a similar sort of concept with a replacement rib. Questions that we've got to answer yet is, do we want to do Tier 3 or Tier 4 boardings? The SAS were really keen for us to be able to do Tier 4, but as a Navy, that's not an absolute requirement. Console position is, again, a lot of debate on forward console, after console, mid console. The big problem with that, the general consensus is that forward console is a lot better. The downside is that we're used to a rear console, and the operators really want to keep a rear console. And we'd have to change our whole way of operating, because at the moment the coxswain is in charge and he's got a bowman. If we go to a forward console, it'd have to probably be a coxswain and a navigator with the navigator in charge. And there's a fair bit of resistance from our operators to look at changes along those sort of lines. Hull material, aluminium, composite, and there's some new materials, I believe, now as well. We chose composite for the last lot, mainly because it was easier to repair. My own feeling that was a bad mistake, because it's also a lot easier to damage as well. But it can be repaired on the ship, whereas aluminium is a bit more difficult. Drive chain. We've got a mixture of stern legs and jet at the moment. The operators are keen to stick with jet, although I think that's just because that's what they're used to. We've never considered outboards. It's not been an option. You don't put petrol on board on a warship, or if you do, it's just a couple of 20-litre cans that can be jettisoned really quickly. With the diesel outboard suddenly becomes another option that has never been considered. So to try and get that as an option is going to be hard work, but it definitely has a lot of other advantages. Size limitation, that's the big limit. We need a Doctor Who TARDIS. We need a 7.5 metre rib that can do a 9 metre ribs job. And that's the fleet. So we've got the frigate, the multi-role vessel, and the patrol vessel. But yeah, any questions? The effects on the environment, or the environmental effects, yes, we've not actually worked out what that entails at the moment, but it does. One of the things is that jet boats are not particularly good in a Antarctic environment because you get a lot of dissolved air in the seawater. So that is another reason probably not to go down the jet boat. It's also another reason not to go down the composite, working with a composite hull around ice. So we're beginning to think about that, but it's not that far advanced in our thinking as yet. Anything else? Well, thanks very much.